Coming up on this episode of Tom Talks Rubbish.
If I die tomorrow, right, and no one remembers who I am on the media side, that's fine. Because I hope I know I'll have made an impact on my family.
Mm.
And that'll be something they're proud of.
Mhm.
So to me, that's really all that matters. I don't care about like what people think of me professionally, to be honest. It's more of like, what do my wife and kids think about me? Am I the best husband and am I the best husband and father I can be to them? And do they know what they mean to me?
What's going on, guys? It's your boy, Tom Talks Rubbish, and stand back for another interview. This time, I'm joined by one of my favourite guests I ever had on the channel before to have him back on. I'm joined by the one and only Mike Straw from Insider Gaming. So, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be back. It's been a while, but I'm super thrilled to be back.
I'm really excited to chat with you once again. We had such the response we got from our one, which was I found really cool, was it's like it was so cool to speak to someone who's a wrestling fan who works in media but doesn't work in wrestling media, if that makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. Because then you can see it without having to be super critical, and it's being a fan of it and being in it as a media and a fan. I don't know. You get that fine line of how far you can go with things.
Very much so. For the people that may not know, because my audience has grown a little bit since the last time I had you on and things like that, where do you first discover wrestling, Mike, as an overall fan?
I was a little kid. I used to watch it with my grandpa. My mom didn't like wrestling, but when my grandpa was around, she couldn't tell him no because Papa wanted to watch it with his grandkids. So it was that. And then I started to just get into it every week when I was like 7, 8, 9 years old. Stopped watching it for like a year because I was too old to watch that stuff. And then I realized, no, that's awful. No, this is fun. This is so much fun to watch. And then I got into it. And then ever since I was like 12, 13 years old, it's been a weekly watch no matter what.
What era are we talking about, my friend?
I started in the Attitude Era. So 97, 90, like the kickoff of it, 97, 96 was when I really started watching it. But I was also a much bigger WCW kid than I was WWF as a little kid. And then it was as things changed and I discovered Stone Cold, that's when I started to like gradually move over.
Yeah. Why did WCW speak to you as a fan back then?
I loved Kevin Nash. Just because I remember the first time I saw Kevin Nash, I wasn't super into like wrestling when I was like 5, obviously, but I remember seeing Kevin Nash and seeing this giant, like when he was still Diesel, and seeing this giant man. I'm like, I want to be that, not realizing I'm not going to grow to 7 feet tall.
Yeah.
And I wanted to be that. And so when he went over and I really started to watch it with my grandpa and whatnot, and I saw he was on WCW, I just kept watching WCW.
Were you a fan of Diesel Power, for lack of a better word, as WCW called it for WWF, or were you not watching during that time?
Not really watching it enough, or if I was, I don't remember enough of it. It was more of like I was a casual like kid just watching it if it was on type of thing. It wasn't until I was like closer to like 8, 9, 10 where I would actively like seek out watching it.
As a big Diesel fan, though, did you go back and watch his 95,
all the time? Yeah,
95
all the time. Like
WWE
the run when he was Shawn Michaels' bodyguard, that whole story, like everything. Once I got old enough and I had access to it through various means, when in the early 2000s with the internet, I watched as much as I could.
What is your thoughts on his 95 title run? Because most traditional wrestling fans do not look back on that with the most positive light, for lack of a better phrase.
It was more so less him and the state of the WWF. Watching back on 95 WWF, there were some really good things. Like whatever Bret Hart did was fantastic, even though he's not my favorite, but you admit when someone's really good. I felt like if he had better opponents, it would have been a better. There was nothing felt credible going up against him. There was no one, and then the whole Mabel thing, and just nothing felt credible with him while he had the title as far as people coming after him.
What is your thoughts on, you brought up Mabel there, their 95 SummerSlam match?
Awful. I wish I could get it out of my memory. Like the fact that I watch it and I still remember it. Like even though I didn't watch it live, I watched it. I wish I never watched it.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying completely there. What is your thoughts on this particular spot where Mabel just jumps on Diesel's back and you just hear the cuss words, for lack of a better word, picked up on the mic? Because I believe Diesel was injured at that point. He'd asked
Yeah.
Mabel to take it easy on him.
Yeah, and I know my temper. That's when I would have thrown hands for real. I would have not have been able to keep being a professional. I don't care. I would have gone off the rails into business for myself, whatever term you want to use. I know how I would have reacted. I would have committed like violent crimes on this man for doing that, like tried to beat the holy hell out of him, for lack of a better way to say it.
Yeah.
Because it was absolutely dirty.
I agree. So when you discovered WCW, was that what your grandpa watched more, or was
He
it the
watched
sort of
what
thing
was
that
ever
you
was
found it
on.
yourself?
I found it myself, scrolling through the channels, because I didn't follow, like, obviously being that young, like who went where and what. I just scrolled, and it was like right around Bash at the Beach '96 that I found WCW, and I saw Kevin because I was wondering where the heck he was, and I saw who I thought was Diesel still. And then I remember just telling my grandpa to watch that. He just liked wrestling. He was big into WWF, but if I wanted to watch one or the other, like he would pick.
What is your thoughts on the Hogan heel turn?
I didn't understand the big deal about it when I was a kid. Obviously, being so young, not seeing like prime Hulkamania that run. As I got older, I understood why people got it, and then growing up and seeing what John Cena became, it would be the excuse me, it would have been the similar had John Cena ever turned heel after turning face in 2003. I really thought, like, how could this guy ever turn heel? Like, it just doesn't make sense. And how well it worked just blew me away. As you got smarter to how things worked in the industry, it made perfect sense. Like, it was the perfect storm to do it. Whereas, like, one of those, they caught lightning in a bottle and they ran with it.
You talked about there, obviously we've talked about not discovering wrestling until 95, 96. Where have you gone back and watched Hulkamania at all? And what is your thoughts on Hulkamania?
No, never really watched him. I never cared for him as a wrestler. This has nothing to do with how he is today. I've never liked him. Anytime he came back for his returns in WWE when I was like a teenager and whatnot, it was, I want him to lose. Like, lose. That Shawn Michaels Hulk match in SummerSlam 05, wanted him to lose. 06 against Randy, wanted him to lose. Like, it's just like, not just go away, but I just never found his type of matches entertaining to me.
What about Hogan Rock? As that is very decisive.
That match I enjoyed, I think, more for the atmosphere than what the match was. The Rock was still at the top of his game and could do fantastic, but more that the crowd in that match, I think, made that match. Kind of like it's the opposite of the Goldberg Lesnar match from WrestleMania 20 to me. This might get some people. You mute the crowd. That Goldberg Lesnar match from Mania 20 isn't as bad as people think it is. The crowd made it seem like it was the worst match of all time. You mute the crowd for Rock Hogan, it's not as great, I think, as people think it is. I'm not saying it's a bad match, but it's not like. But that's the thing with wrestling. All of these things make a great moment. The crowd is a major part of making that moment great. And it worked. Like, they had him in the palm of their hands and it worked. But from the actual wrestling itself, you weren't getting this great oh my God, match. You're also looking at a guy in his 50s at the time.
You talked about crowd and wrestling there. So how did your wrestling fandom, and we skipped a couple of decades, but how did your wrestling fandom survive the pandemic then?
At that time, I was more into watching the matches. The just and felt no different. The pandemic, the Thunderdome, and no one there compared to watching a full arena. It for a while, especially during that time, it felt no. Medium shows were different. Like obviously, them investing, especially on the WWE side for a while, but they just became so dry that it just didn't matter. Like there just weren't these organic chants. Like the only thing you got at the time, like even where the "This is awesome" chants, and it's like those are chants I'm not a fan of. And I don't want to go off on too much of a tangent right now on that one. But yeah, it's just I just survived watching the matches itself. And I was just like, it's as if I can't hear the TV anyway because I have my kids screaming. So that's kind of just how I viewed it.
What about when cinematic matches? What is your thoughts on that out of interest?
Well, I love them. I love them when they're not overdone. When it like during the pandemic, it made sense to do more of them because it added a flair. But I really enjoy them when they're a nice change of pace to everything going on. Like you have all this stuff, and then you have like this one cinematic match every like few months or whatever. So they're great when done in moderation.
That's really, really cool. So once you discover wrestling and once you are watching it, are you like every time you can get your hands on something you will kind of guy, or was it strictly a tradition with your grandpa?
It got to every time I can get my hands on something. I still try and view that if I can get my hands and if I can find the time to watch something, I go out of my way to watch it. I watch, as much as I can live, life with 3 kids, but if there's something I missed live and I see people talking about it and raving about it, I go out of my way like to watch it. I'll watch it early in the morning. I'll watch just that match in the middle. If I have a moment, I will sit down and watch it.
Where is your fandom today then? You talked about how you watch wrestling today. Where is your fandom today then? What's the company that you tend to go like, okay, they've got a show, I might check that out? What's the wrestler that you might be like, yeah, I'll check them out, etc.?
So it's in a weird place. So for a while, I was so down on WWE to where I was like, I wasn't watching the weekly shows. I would catch up on them through YouTube videos and stuff like that. And then I'd watch the pay-per-views. Now I'm watching, especially because Raw for now is back to 2 hours. It's a lot easy for me to sit and watch a 2-hour show than a 3+ hour show. So I'll watch Raw usually. SmackDown, I'll watch bits if I need to because Friday nights are just tough. And then AEW, my wife and I, we still watch Dynamite every week. It's just now with Dynamite, it used to be appointment watching for me. And now I think I watch it just out of habit as opposed to being excited. It's this flip with me. For a few years, it was like AEW. Now it's like AEW has these great matches. I will make sure I watch these great matches. But from an overall standpoint, I am enjoying, for the most part, what WWE is doing. And then on a smaller level, I don't miss a TNA pay-per-view. I try and catch up as much weekly on TNA as possible, but I don't have, access to watch the weekly program right now. So it's one of those, I'll catch up on YouTube or social media and stuff and then watch the pay-per-views. And then I watch the local indie wrestling here, Empire State Wrestling, which is I'm so excited. Quick aside, I'm taking my 7-year-old, he just turned 7, to his first indie show in a couple weeks.
That's really, really cool.
We get Gringo Loco versus Speedball Mike Bailey at this show. And I am so excited for him to see that match in general, but to see Speedball in person. I wish my first indie shows had these types of names on them, but I'm so excited to see his reaction to being like up close second row in an indie show where he's seeing like, you know, these big names.
What was that conversation like then with your son or maybe your wife being like, I want to try and get the kids into wrestling? How did that come about?
It just happened organically because we watch it all the time. So kids will come in, they'll sit and see what we're doing, sit on the couch with us or play, and then they'll watch and get into it. And my 7-year-old and my 3-year-old are obsessed. Like my 7-year-old, we just celebrated his birthday, and his grandmother got him his very first wrestling ring toy. Like we've been getting him wrestlers, but we had never gotten him a wrestling ring yet. And he saw it at the store. He got to pick out anything he wanted, and that's what he picked out. So he picked that out. We're gonna be like they are obsessed with wrestling their stuffed animals. They throw on Spotify and they have a wrestling themes playlist that they'll just listen to wrestling themes and perform them. My 3-year-old performs Cody Rhodes theme on the daily. Like this morning when I woke up and I grabbed him from his bed, I'm getting him dressed and stuff, and he's just singing adrenaline in my soul, and he just stops and does the whoa. It just happened organically. We didn't sit there and say we're going to watch wrestling. It's just my wife and I watched it. They found it, and now they're falling in love with it. And my 7-year-old, like the last time I talked to him, what he wanted to be, he always wanted to be a scientist. Always. Now it's changed to him wanting to be a pro wrestler. And I'm just like, and he asked me to build a ring in our backyard. And I'm like, well, I don't think your mom's going to let me build you a ring at 7 years old. I don't think CPS is going to let me build a ring at 7 years old for a kid to take a bump. But it's one of those things of it just happened and it couldn't make me happier. It was something I always hoped would happen because of how big into wrestling my wife and I are. And
I believe that was
there's
something
this
we
family
talked about
thing.
last time I had you on. It was,
yeah,
we talked about, I think they were just starting. I think they'd seen clips.
Yep.
And they were just starting last time I had you on. And now they're like, yeah, I like this. So when your son says to you, I want to be a wrestler rather than a scientist is a very secure career. Wrestling, as we know, is not. I know he's only 7, but if that were to happen, is there any worry on your part? Or is it like,
no,
go live your dream. We only get one life.
Bingo. Do what you want to do. Just make sure you know what you want to do. And he could always do the science. He can go to school for science if he wanted to be a chemist or an engineer, whatever. He could do that and still do wrestling. And then he has a fallback plan. You know, like do not just because, you know, the norm says you should have this or don't do that. Like take the chance. Like there are things like I remember I was 16 and I did my first training. And I lasted in school for 6 months. I suffered my first injury and I was done. I hurt my leg and I'm like, this isn't for me. I know I couldn't physically hold up to it. But if he wants to give it a go, I'm not going to be the one to say, no, that's dumb or that's a bad idea. I'm the last one. If you have an idea and you have something you want to try, as long as it's not, you know, illegal, more power to you, and you do, and I'll do as much as I can to support you. So we'll see. I mean, granted, his mind might change in 2 years to none. He doesn't like it anymore. I don't know. I hope not. But the kids' minds change all the time. But if that's what he wants to do in, 10 years, he says he wants to go to wrestling school, especially with the amount that pop up around us.
Yeah.
With great people like Brendan Thurston and, Braxton, or not Braxton Sutter anymore, but the Blade, like the Butch, like all these people around here with schools. Like it's just the opportunities in our region now, especially like we see who's come out of our area. Like the biggest name right now from our area is Daniel Garcia, and he watches Daniel Garcia and he loves him, like absolutely loves Daniel Garcia. I'm like, you can be that. You can, if you want, you can be that.
Where does your supportive father side come from? Was that with your journalist side and your wrestling training yourself? Was that something you always had?
For the most part, yeah. It was more of my parents never wanted to, if I had an idea, they're like, just stick with it. Like they wanted to make sure I knew what I wanted to do. Like they were old school in certain ways, but if I had ideas or thoughts of what I wanted to do, they weren't going to sit there and tell me no. Like if you don't succeed, well, don't ever have a like what if type of mentality with it. So that's been kind of what I've instilled. And I've been around, I grew up with people, with old friends who are no longer friends for whatever reason, and watched parents like completely just, crap all over their kids. Like, I want to do this when I get older. And they'd be like, well, that's dumb. No, it's not. No, it's not. You don't know. They could be, people thought me, like, I grew up one of the things I wanted to do is be a journalist. I wanted to cover this. I wanted to cover hockey for a living. I did. It was just my dream. I did everything I could. I got to do that. I got to live that out. I moved on to games journalism because of my passion for video games. And it was like, all growing up, I was always told, like, you're not going to do anything with games. Like, this is pointless and stuff. I'm like, now I'm getting paid to write about the things I love. Like, could it be better? Sure. Everything could be better. I could be making a lot more money. That'd be great. But I'm still doing something I love to do. And that's because, it's like I took that chance, and that's all I'm going to preach. Like, take the chance. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out, but you tried.
Definitely. So you brought up your work in games journalism there. Where does after wrestling training, where does your passion for games journalism come from?
It was always there. I grew up reading like EGM and Game Informer, which is sadly neither of them are around. But I grew up reading these magazines, and I always just wanted my words. I loved reading the stories about what people, like the anecdotal stories about how games made people feel. And I was like, that's what I want to do. And that would just be so fun to sit there and write a story about how a game impacted my life. And I remember in high school writing that for my school paper. Like, I pitched a games section because games and internet games were so, like, they're just on the rise. Like, when I was in high school, World of Warcraft just started to become a thing. So it was great. People were getting into it and stuff like that. And I started writing about it for the school paper, and it just continued there. Like, I had moved into sports when I hit college and did that until I was about 24. And then I moved back to games journalism and tech pretty much permanently, or full time for the most part, on that side of things. And it's just skyrocketed. Like, I couldn't have asked for a better situation right now. Like, I get to tell the stories, I get to interview great people, I get to meet so many people, I get to travel. Like, I got to travel to Iceland because of video games. Like, are you kidding me? Like, I like that type of stuff. I couldn't have never imagined being able to do, and games have given me that.
I get what you mean completely there. She talked about everything games have given you, but how do you sort of maintain that fandom and make sure you're still a fan, and rather than being like, okay, games are now part of my job?
It's hard. It is very hard. The best thing I did, because I hit that point in 2022, I was set to leave entirely. I was burnt out. I was done. And a big reason for that is because I was reviewing so many games. So I never got to enjoy the games I played. It's one thing if you're covering the news and doing interviews and telling the stories, but when you're reviewing games and you're getting out a review a week, and you're not really getting the time to really enjoy and sit and take in what you're experiencing, and then you're bouncing around. You got this game, you write the review, you get it out. Then you go to the next game, write the review, get it out. And you play some really great games that you play some really bad ones, which you're happy to be done with. But you play these great games that are great, but you can't really sit and enjoy and take in and really go slow. Like, I like to sit and slow and take games. Like, I don't like to rush through games that come out, like story single player games and stuff. I don't like to rush through them in like 2-3 days like some people do. I like to sit there and take my time with them and really explore and everything like that. And it got to the point where I wasn't doing that, and I wasn't able to do it because I was under just so much pressure getting things out. So I was ready to leave. And then Insider Gaming came along, and we weren't doing reviews. Like, we started to do reviews recently, but we're doing the reviews we want to do, the reviews we think our readers want, and we're taking our time with them. We're not worried about being the first outlet up, with the review to get all the clicks. It's like, no, we want to be the best one, not the first, the best. And it kind of reinvigorated that passion over the last couple of years. But it got really tough for a while. It's very tough, kind of like with the wrestling thing. Like, I don't think I could be as big of a fan or enjoy wrestling if I was and this is where I give so much credit to the team at Fightful, who I'm very close with. Like the fact that they do reviews after every show, and they have to walk at everything so critical with that eye. Like, I don't think my fandom would survive if I had to do that for wrestling or for games. If I had to look at granted, there's way more games, right? But I don't think my fandom could survive if I was doing that.
And
it's
I know
very
mine
quick to be
couldn't.
burned. Yeah, it's very quick to be burned.
I know mine couldn't, based off past experience, because I tried to do that with this channel before I got into the interviewing side, and it was like, this just isn't for me. I'm not enjoying wrestling anymore if I keep doing it like this.
Yeah, watching it as a fan is so much more enjoyable. Like, there's certain things I get really mad about. I get really mad when, we're treated as dummies. When they treat us like we don't pay attention to what happened 2 weeks ago, or the logic and things of like trying to figure out why things make sense. Like certain things, like little kids, they're not going to pay attention to that stuff. But the wrestling is cool again for us on the older side, over 15 to admit we like. And it hit the point where it's like I certain things still bother me, but I try and look at it as like from this all-encompassing, like, how does this, like, am I entertained? I don't care if it's goofy.
Yeah,
I like the goofy, silly stuff at times. You don't need everything to be so serious all the time. So there's certain things like I know I wouldn't be able to do or enjoy have I stuck and stayed in the wrestling media side of things.
So did you try wrestling media back in the day then?
When Fightful first started, Sean brought me on as one of the first like news writers. I did that for about 7 months before just stepping back to the games full time. And then I'll still do I would do stuff when they had the magazine and stuff like that. But those were very deep feature stories, which has nothing to do with the current product, which were the things I wanted to get back into. And doing interviews and stuff like that. But yeah, I tried it, but I knew I just couldn't do it because I knew I started to really feel myself slowly slip. Like, I wasn't doing the reviews, but trying to keep up with all the news. And it's just like, I also enjoy surprises in wrestling.
Yeah.
And when you are on that side, you do not get surprised anymore. Like, there are no like legitimate shocks as to returns or changes or heel turns, like there's no legitimate shock anymore with that when you're on that side. And I wanted that. I want to feel wrestling at times. I want to feel like I'm that 10-year-old again, where I'm like, this is the greatest thing ever. And when you're on the media side, it's very hard to do that.
What was the last moment that made you be like, I'm like that the 10-year-old kid would love this?
Oh, so recent. The last moment was CM Punk's return to WWE. But I think that's because no one knew.
Yeah.
So that was the most genuine. Especially, my favorite thing is the entire night, I have a couple friends over, we're watching, and we're just making jokes. We're like, oh, Frito-Lay's commercial, which owns Pepsi, or Pepsi owns, or they own Pepsi, but whatever. Frito-Lay's commercial during Survivor Series, CM Punk return confirmed. And we were making these jokes the whole night. Oh, the colors of Survivor Series are red and blue, like Pepsi. CM Punk confirmed. Like, all night we were making these jokes, and then it happened, and we're just looking at each other, like the joy, the laughter, the shock of it happening was so good, was so fun. And I just like, that was a moment where I wish I could bottle up, because I'd felt something with it that I just hadn't felt in so long, of like a genuine shock, a genuine like, I can't believe what I just saw moment, where it's like, holy hell, he's back. Say what you want about him, he's still one of my favorites ever. And to see him back there was something I never thought I'd see. I don't care if the whole never say never, that was one where I was willing to say never. And then making all the jokes and everything, it truly blew me away. And I was so happy. And then he got hurt in the Rumble, and I got so bummed. And then I thought about, like, no, this is going to make it even sweeter when things picked up. And it did. That Drew and Punk feud was I put it in the Louvre. Like, it was so perfectly done the whole way.
I think what's been great about that feud is as well, and I was watching a wrestling news video today, and it's like, but bearing in mind, guys, we're recording this in November of 2024. if you guys are seeing this in January. I think what's very cool is since the Hell in a Cell match, they haven't been on TV. So
Yeah.
that's sold Hell in a Cell again. Like,
Yep,
that's
100%. Like Punk came out
sold.
the Raw after and said he doesn't know how he's walking. He did all that stuff to kind of like leave for a while, and
He knew
that
he didn't.
return,
Is going to be phenomenal.
the return for both of them around. My guess is maybe around the Rumble is going to be fantastic, especially if it sets up. If I get Punk and Rollins at Mania next year, again, the little boy in me is going to be so happy for that match. Like I get, like, granted, like, it's just one of those matches where I thought I'd never get, especially at this stage, and that I might get as long as they both stay healthy. And we know with both of them being banged up the way they are, like, who knows?
I see what you're saying completely there. So you talked about your work with Insider Gaming and things like that. How did your work with hockey recently come about then?
So I had done when I was in college, what, 16, 13 to 16 years ago at this point. When I was in my undergrad program, I was a hockey writer. I was a credentialed reporter covering the NHL's Buffalo Sabres for 4 years, 5 years. And then I left that because, it was tiring, and I wanted to, and other reasons with certain people. I wanted to move on. So I moved to games. And then I had the chance earlier this year. I wanted to get back into sports writing. And an old colleague of mine, Blake Meek, he was working at a website, TWSN, and he told me reach out because they're looking for people, and he thought I'd be a fit. So I reached out. I talked with Malik and Daniel there, and we hit it off. And I kind of said I knew what I wanted to do, like covering football, sure, but I wanted to really turn the site into a hockey site. And slowly but surely, our hockey coverage is getting there, and it just allowed me to get back to covering a game that I loved. Like, hockey was my first love as a kid. Like, that was the sport I loved. And this allowed me to get back to covering that and enjoying it. And I can't thank them enough for the opportunity because it's been so fun. It's been fun. The teams there, like Marissa, Will, like I can name everybody. They're just so encouraging with everything. Like, they never crap on an idea. If you have an idea and you can back up your thought, they are all for it. And it allows you to open up and, like, hey, you might have a thought that people are going to think is controversial about what's going on, but if you have reasoning behind your thought, write about it. And that type of stuff I love. Like, it comes very rarely for me to have these types of thoughts because I watch the game and I'm like, I can see the logic, but sometimes there's things that just really like irk me and I need to get out, and they allow that opportunity. And I can't think of them enough.
How do you maintain your passion for hockey then? Very similar to, because you talked about the fact that you don't do wrestling coverage because you didn't want to lose your fandom. So how do you make the hockey fandom work then?
That's tougher. It's tough and it's not. It's easy because each game is different. Each game plays out different. Like, you're not worried about like how a writer is going to write a story and things like that. And you have all these different games each night. The tough part becomes the morality of it in my mind with the off ice issues with people and just the way certain players act and what's happened over the years with, like, there's been scandals, like assault scandals with Hockey Canada and with covering up assault from the Chicago Blackhawks organization, like these things that have happened over the years that really go, why do I even cover this sport anymore? Because there's this just old boys mentality of like just covering up and protecting your own, despite even if what's being protected is terrible. And it gets tough. It's very tough. Luckily, I have a great support group of fellow reporters and journalists that we all just talk about it, and we just try and do what we can to bring, when these moments arise, we write about it and cover it in a way that brings more awareness to it, because leaving it all together and not bringing awareness to certain things is a disservice to everything. And it kind of, we feel like we become complicit in it all. So by sticking with it and covering the good, but also making sure the bad gets covered the way it needs to, we think does more help than harm.
I understand what you're saying. I had this conversation, it'll be last year at this point, with John Alba about what wrestling media has to do to be considered equal to traditional sports media. As someone that works in both hockey and gaming media, what are your thoughts on what wrestling media can do to be equal to other medias?
The ones who are treating it like true media and journalism, I think they just need to keep doing what they're doing. They're killing it. Like the Andrew Zarians, the John Albas, you know, again the Fightful, Sean Ross Saps, like they're killing it in what they're doing. Like they're coming at it with these unique things. Chris Van Vliet, like his interviews are like, to me personally, the gold standard of wrestling interviews.
I would agree.
I don't miss an episode because they're just so good. But these people are doing great. My problem is, and this is going to piss people off too, is the wrestling companies, and this happens in games a lot too. This is where they cross over. Wrestling companies and game publishers and stuff, they try to view the journalists as an extension of their public relations. And they try to manipulate the coverage a little and make sure that the good comes out. And which I get it. That's what they're trying to do. But you need to hit that point. And there's people that do that go, we're not your PR. We're journalists. We're reporters. Like Sean does not want to be called a journalist. Sean is not a journalist. He's just a very tall person. Yeah. But you have like, we're not PR. If there's something that needs to be addressed, it will get addressed. Like it's like when Triple H, like admittedly, when he made the comment on the lawsuit, like he didn't read it, and he makes these comments about like diversity on the cards and stuff like that. Like if you give an answer, like, or you get mad that these questions are asked, then just don't have the press conferences.
Yeah.
At all, because those are questions that need to be asked. It comes with me with hockey. Like, yeah, you're going to ask the questions about the game, but if something happens, you find out a player, you know, was driving under the influence the night before and he crashed into a Tim Hortons, you want to know about what and why, and he ended up playing the next day. Like, you want to know why. And you might get brushed off and be like, well, blah, 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 give them, you know, the whole cliche coach speak or PR speak in your answer, but at least you asked about it. And the one thing with journalists is you have to not be afraid to ask the questions that may get you anger from the readers or the viewers, because there's a reason you're there, and it's because you're good at your job. Ask the questions that need to be asked, tell the stories that need to be told. Like that is my advice to anyone, right, who wants to do, whether it's wrestling media, games media, sports, politics, I don't care what it is. Ask the questions that need to be asked, and don't, even if you don't get the right answer, you showed that you're willing to go to the places that some are. As long as it's not, again, illegal.
Yeah. Yeah. What is your, I don't know how to phrase this. What is your thoughts on the difference between like content, because this is something John Alba brought up as well, difference between being a content creator and being a journalist within the wrestling, but both being invited to press conferences?
I don't have a problem with it. So the difference to me between content creator and being a journalist is sometimes with journalism, you have to tell very boring stories, but they're important stories, but they may be very boring. To the general person. As a content creator, your goal is to elicit that reaction, and kind of like the performance, you want to get that entertainment and engagement, and you really want to be hyped for your, like, that's just, you want that, you know, that audience. Again, like, as far as them both being at the press conferences, I don't have a problem with it. My problem comes with if they start getting into the, I guess, ass kissery of the questions. Like, that's why I don't like, for the most part, watching UFC press conferences anymore. They have gotten to the point where they, like, there was one not too long ago, maybe like a week ago from the time we're recording this, where they praised slap fighting. And
Yeah,
they just basically like gushed over Dana White's decisions. And it's like, dude, that's not the time or place for this. Like, be professional. Like, again, you're not PR. Like, if you want to write about it, but don't just sit there and shower the dude. But that's the thing on that end, they pick the people to shower with praise.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things of like, you can give compliments and stuff when you ask questions, but ask relevant questions, I guess, is where it would come down to me. It's when it's nothing but like praise and this was great, this was great, this was great. Yeah, not everything's that great.
You brought up earlier in this conversation, and we will wrap this up in a second. I do want to be respectful of your time, my friend. But like, you brought up earlier that when we last talked, you were a bigger WWE fan. No, away around. You were a bigger AEW fan. Now we're speaking again. You're a bigger WWE fan. So, what is your thoughts on the tribalistic nature of wrestling as well?
It's stupid. Go where you enjoy the show. I am not AEW is better, WWE is better. You're dumb if you like that. Like, go where you enjoy the product. If you only enjoy AEW because it's not WWE, good. Just enjoy AEW. AEW. You don't got to bash everybody who likes WWE, and vice versa. Like the tribalistic nature and everything. Like, you're on my side or you're the enemy. It's everywhere, and it's so frustrating. It takes so much enjoyment out of it. But I will say, it seems to be exclusive to social media. Like, the best thing I did, I deleted Twitter from my phone. I'm on like Threads and Blue Sky and all that. I'm on Twitter during the day on my computer for work to share my stories and stuff. But deleting Twitter from my phone was the best thing ever, because you don't see that. Like, you don't see it. And it makes it so much more enjoyable when you're not being like, you don't put out an opinion, whether it's good or a bad opinion. Like, you liked something you didn't, where you are getting yelled at all the time by people behind a keyboard or behind a phone screen that would never say that to your face. And there's people who have a much bigger following than me, a much bigger following, that how they deal with it, I have no idea. I just block everything. My biggest problem is I had a history of, I would get into arguments and just keep going. And then there's always that risk of saying something you shouldn't in the heat. And it's one of those, like, I'm just going to block everyone who does this. And because I know what they're trying to do out of me. And the goal is to not let it, because when you don't give them when you don't give them that satisfaction of getting to you, that's when they stop. Hopefully.
I understand what you're saying completely there. You talked about their satisfaction and things like that. So if I was to ask you this question, Mike, I don't know if I was asking this question when I had you on last time, but do you view your career in journalism as a whole as a success? And what do you think your legacy is in the gaming space?
It's tough. Like, so I've been in the journalism industry for 15 years. I got my first job at a newspaper in 2009. So I was 19. And as a game, to see where I'm at as a games reporter, games journalist, I have to view it as a success, just because, one, I have a job in an industry where, like, in the games industry itself, on the publishing side, there's been about 16,000 layoffs in 2024 alone. It's something I track regularly. I have my own site for it, gaming layoffs. Like, I track it all. On the media side, there's been thousands of layoffs this year, hundreds to thousands of layoffs this year. And some really great people have lost their jobs, some fantastic people. And it's such an industry. So have a job and to be a senior editor at an outlet that I love, working under Tom Henderson and working with Grant Taylor-Hill, my co-senior editor, like, I can't view it as anything less than a success. Did I think I'd be somewhere bigger? Probably, but I would have had to move. Admittedly, I can't justify I can't convince my wife to move out to California, where all the game studios are and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So doing what it is here, and then it's just trying to travel and make connections. So it's that mix. Like, certain days I feel like I've had a successful career. Other days I feel like, what the hell am I doing? Because like, this is going nowhere. I've been just toiling along. You get those constantly. And like, I guarantee you felt it.
Oh God,
like,
yes.
Yeah, you have those interviews and you're like, things are going really well. This picked up steam. And then you have like a few days or even weeks where you're just like, why am I doing this anymore?
God,
and then there's always something that clicks with you and you're like, oh, that's why. Because something happens that you go, I can't give this up.
I'll give you a massive example if you don't mind.
Of course.
So I did. I don't know if you checked out this interview, but I did an interview with Brian Zane recently,
Yeah.
and everything just went perfect. And it was almost my Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 25 moment, in the sense of he came backstage, didn't he, and was like, that might have been the one to end it on. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, he was like, because that match was perfect. I thought
Yeah.
my interview with Brian went perfect, and the thumbnail worked, as we were talking about off camera, technology worked and things like that. So I just, but then I recorded something for someone else the next day, and I was like, nope, I enjoy this too much. I can't stop. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. And like I did a story like when I went to Iceland. I came back from Iceland last year. I went last May of 2023.
Mm.
And I came back. I got to meet the CEO behind Eve Online, and like I got to tour that studio and stuff like that. And I was like, I don't think I'm gonna top this trip.
Mm.
Met some great people, and then this summer I went up to Toronto for just a picnic with people in the industry. That's all. Nothing official, just a picnic, hanging out. And I'm meeting people and being introduced to people and just not talking about work. We're talking, the games came up, but that's because that's what we love.
Yeah.
Like they were journalists, content creators, PR, actors. Like we're just talking about what we loved. And that I sat there and go, this is why I do it. And just meeting these types of people and calling these people colleagues and some of them friends. And like, even if I eventually find something else, because like aside from the writing, I'm also a web developer.
Yeah.
And I run my own web development company. Even if I get to the point where I'm doing that and that's bringing in a lot of work and money, no matter what, I don't think I could ever leave this behind. Just because I love it too much. And every time, like there's even a couple weeks ago, I had the moment where I'm like, what am I doing? Like I'm sitting here just doing the same, not the same thing every day, but what am I doing? And then you just hit something clicks, or you get told, like I had a comment on a story I wrote of being the most respectful and thorough reporter they've read in years. And I'm like, you have no idea. I wanted to print that comment out and frame it.
Yeah.
You have no idea how much, like, they had no idea how much that meant to me. Like, because that's all I do. It's like, I don't care if 10 people read my work or a million people read my work. I want to know that the work I did was good. Granted, obviously you want more people to read it, but if only 10 people read it, but they all loved it, cool. That's a thrill. It's kind of like that indie wrestling theory. Like, yeah, I wrestled in front of 50 people, but they all loved the match.
Yeah.
So I did something right. And my goal is to do that. My goal right now at this stage, I'm in my mid-30s, is to turn Insider Gaming into a household name where we are the top gaming outlet in the world behind an IGN. IGN is here. IGN is the WWE of games media.
You want to be almost the AEW, for lack of that word.
Yeah. If we were going to compare, I want to be number 2. And we're on our way. We are on our way, and we're doing great stuff. But that's the goal. That is like my motivation right now, is to get to that. And we'll see what happens and when we do it.
That's really, really cool. What do you think your legacy is in this space, though, my friend?
To be honest, I don't think I have one. There might be some people that would come out, and a legacy is not something I think a person should dictate what their own is, if that makes sense. It's kind of like a nickname. You don't give yourself a nickname. Other people give it for you. And I think with the legacy, like, I know I'm known to break stories. I have broken news on the WWE 2K games. I know there's people that follow me on social media solely because of the news I've broken in the past for 2K, for the WWE games. And I'm like, you know what? If I gave you joy on that and you liked my breaking news and stuff like that, then great. But my legacy, I'm going to leave it up to other people to decide. If I don't have one, I don't have one professionally, because I have a village. Like, if I die tomorrow, right, and no one remembers who I am on the media side, that's fine, because I hope I know I'll have made an impact on my family. And that'll be something they're proud of. So to me, that's really all that matters. I don't care about like what people think of me professionally, to be honest. It's more of like, what do my wife and kids think about me? Am I the best husband and am I the best husband and father I can be to them? And do they know what they mean to me?
Oh,
So that's really all that matters to me.
that's really, really cool, my friend. That's a beautiful way to wrap this up, if I'm honest, Mike. But before we do, we're going to do a segment that is a staple on this channel that I'm pretty sure we did before, called Generic Wrestling Questions.
Let's
Those of you
go.
that have seen my interviews before, when I asked where I last Mike, his favorite match, favorite pay-per-view card, such as Double or Nothing 2019, his favorite wrestler's entrance team, favorite tag team, and favorite wrestler. So, what's your favorite match of all time?
You know, I'm gonna go. Last time we talked, I think it was Nakamura versus Zayn at Takeover Dallas because I saw that in person. And I'm gonna go with another match I saw in person, and it was Omega versus Ospreay at Forbidden Door 2023. I can watch that match every day for the rest of my life and be told that's the only match you can watch as a wrestling fan forever. Okay, cool, good, sign me up. I've never enjoyed a match in person more. I've never enjoyed a match just watching more, going back and rewatching. So that, like, it's good. It's so tough to pick, but right now that's got to be my favorite.
Thoughts on the Callis Tripp and Will Ospreay thing up?
The further Will Ospreay gets away from Don Callis, the better.
No. What I mean is, you know, he trips him up in that match.
The tripping him up. You know, I get it. I get it, but I hated it too in that match because he got kicked out and then he came back.
Yeah.
And then the ref just let it happen. You know what I mean? Like, that's where the logic, like, if I ignore that, like that logical sense, that's where it goes to the logic side of things. It's like, well, then why do you get ejected? But if he comes back, it's not a disqualification for coming back type of thing.
Yeah.
But it's still, no matter what, that doesn't take away from how great that match was.
What about your favorite pay-per-view card overall?
That's tough. Because there have been some really, really great ones. There have been some really, really bad ones. I don't know. Like Double or Nothing, you mentioned Double or Nothing 2019. That was so good. That might have to be most recent. I think WrestleMania 17 remains fantastic. No Way Out 2001. Like that run, the Royal Rumble to WrestleMania 17, one, like banger after bang, like get Sheamus in here, banger after banger after banger. Every card was just stacked with great matches. SummerSlam 02, and I know I'm going back to when I was a kid, so you know that's when, but WrestleMania 30 was also for the most part a great card. So I think recently, if I'm looking the past decade, and it's on the fringe, it's just after the decade, but WrestleMania 30 might be my most recent favorite. All time is still probably, it's tied between No Way Out 01, because we had that 3 stages of hell match between Austin and Triple H, and then Rock and Angle for the title. My God. And then WrestleMania 17, like it's a close one between there. But most recently, WrestleMania 30 was so good.
Why does 30 speak to you as a fan then?
I think, granted, the story of how it bookends with Danielson or Daniel Bryan Danielson, and you know the triple threat main event. But the Bray Wyatt Cena match, despite me not liking the result, was a really, really good match. So it had that like bit of everything for me to where I didn't hate any of the
negatives.
Matches. Yeah, like the Lesnar Undertaker match, I feel would have been better had Undertaker not gotten concussed early on. I didn't have a problem with Lesnar winning at all. But like even the Shield versus, Kane and the New Age Outlaws was short, sweet, but it was enough to just show like, no, the Shield is still dominant.
Yeah.
And it was to see because just what they were gonna do. Granted, and it was that like send off, I guess, Mania send off of the Shield before what eventually came a couple months later with the breakup.
Yeah.
The Andre the Giant Battle Royal actually at that point felt like it was going to start meaning something because we thought it was going to take Cesaro right to the top. It took a little bit. Cesaro, just this. So plus it was just like the matches that mattered to me. So I really enjoyed it. Just the whole thing.
That's really, really cool. What about your favorite wrestler's entrance theme?
My Time by Triple H's My Time theme from the late 90s.
Why
It's my favorite all the time. The music, like when that hit, that was always just, I knew what it was, everybody, but it just does something to the ear that just scratches that itch that I absolutely love. Right now, Will Ospreay's theme, is fantastic. My kids love that theme too. They also love Jey Uso's theme just so they can run around the house and eat. Like they just run around the house and just do this all day. But they'll play that song just to play it, to do this, stand on the couch. But yeah, Triple H's My Time is so good. Hot take. The Rock only had one good theme, and that was the Is Cookin' heel theme, the Hollywood Rock theme. And Stone Cold's best theme was Disturbed.
That is some spicy takes there.
Yeah, Stone Cold's Disturbed theme was the best Stone Cold theme there was, and I won't argue it.
Thoughts on Rock's, I suppose, hybrid theme? Is that the right word? Like final boss theme?
I don't like the beginning of it. I like that it brings back the beat from the Hollywood Rock theme, but I don't like it's kind of why I don't like Roman Reigns' theme right now. I don't like entrance themes that take too long to get into the main part of the music. So like the Roman Reigns without it's so long to get into the main bulk of the Roman Reigns theme that it just kills it for me. It's just too long for the excitement. Same with like the Undertaker that's why I never liked the Undertaker's theme. I didn't need 45 seconds of a gong when I know it's going to take 20 minutes for you to get out to the ring. And that's how I am with The Rock. I don't need the smell and then the dun with the lightning bolt. I don't need that. I love the thing is with The Rock's Hollywood theme, I didn't need, and I love it. It's the best one of his, but I still don't like how long it takes to get to the Is Cooking and then the actual music part of it. So I'm also a much bigger fan of themes that get to the point right away.
That's really, really cool. What about your favorite overall tag team?
Ooh. All time. Edge and Christian.
Why did I speak to you as a fan, Mike?
I was the king of the population. I loved Christian. I had every Christian shirt growing up. Anything I could buy. The whiny tantrum Christian was amazing. Even when he was with the Un-Americans, I loved Christian. But that tag team, they were goofballs that knew how to wrestle.
Yeah.
Like when they were together, though, like Edge and Christian, they were goofballs with the kazoos and the five. Like they were just these clowns. But when they were in the match, you're like, they were legitimate threats to every match. And I loved it. And I don't know if we've had a tag team that were like, you could consider, well, they were goofballs, but when the bell rang, you were like, they could win any match. I don't know if we've had a tag team like that since.
Maybe FTR when WWE was getting them to shave each other's backs and stuff.
But even that, that was more of like, that was close. But like FTR is like that old school, like good.
Yeah.
The Young Bucks at the beginning of like being the Elite series, could have been that. Like we're the closest maybe, but I don't know. Aside from that, like the New Day, there we go. The New Day is the closest one, or on par with an Edge and Christian, where you could go. But even that's a trio. But either way, you knew they could be goofs and unicorn headbands and the trombone and bootios, but as soon as that bell rang, you knew they could win any match they were in. And like those are my favorite teams. Those are my favorite wrestler acts, like the ones where they don't take themselves too seriously all the time, but as soon as the bell rings, it's business.
Thoughts on, because you brought up how much you love Christian and stuff, just quickly before we get out of here. Thoughts on Christian's AEW run, Your Dad Is Dead streak, and the Edge versus Adam Copeland rivalry?
I brought that up hoping you would bring this up. I wish my father passed away in 2017. I want to file an official application for Christian to be my new dad. Like, I remember taking my oldest. We went to AEW over the summer. His first ever wrestling show was a Dynamite, and Christian comes out, and the entire arena is chanting, "Be our daddy," or "He's our father," and I'm joining in, and he's looking at me like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I don't have a father like you. He's my father." Like this run of Christian, specifically the father run, patriarchy, is the most fun I've had of Christian since he was like the CLB in like 2004.
I knew you was going to say that, funny enough.
When he was the CLB with Trish and he had Tomko and stuff, like the last bit of run before he left for TNA, that was my favorite run of Christian. And even the one more match stuff in 2011 was good. But this just is so good. It's so good. And he's 50.
I think we need to remember that. And then what was your thoughts on their match and their like rivalry?
The Edge and Christian stuff?
In AEW, yeah.
In AEW, I loved it. It was like this full circle moment for me. Like that I was hoping we'd get again and never thought we would. And then when they both were in the Rumble, I thought, okay, maybe cool. Maybe we're going to finally get some closure. And then obviously WWE was like, now we're good. Christian goes to AEW. It's been perfect. And now my only hope is when Adam Copeland eventually comes back, because he's only got however long left on his contract, they figure some way out to get them two together. But I know it will be. I do not want it as a babyface team. I want to see one more traditional Edge and Christian, Adam and Christian run. I want one more traditional like that where they're slimy ass heels. Will we? I don't think so, because I think the nostalgia will be too much for people to want to boo him. But because Christian by himself, amazing heel, like incredible heel, easy to hate. Christian and Edge, Adam together, it's still so hard to say Adam Copeland, even though that's his name. Those two together, I feel can go both ways really easily, but at this stage, it'd be like trying to turn the Hardys heel. Like, it's not going to work.
To be honest with you, my friend, I think that's a beautiful way to end that. But before we do, we need to know, my friend, who is your favorite overall wrestler of all time?
Triple H.
Why does he speak to you as a fan?
He was so slimy to get everything done and make sure he was on top the whole way that I'm like, that's what I want to do. I want to be that. Like, I wanted to be like Diesel when I was a kid. Like I had said, I wasn't going to be 7 feet tall, but Triple H from like just on the screen, people hated that run from 2002 to 2005. I loved it because my guy was always on top. Yeah. Like, other than like a couple months here and there. But he just, everything he did, he always had some ulterior motive or sinister way to get it, and it worked. Like, even to the point, my third son, my wife and I, we had our third son in May or June 3rd. We named him Hunter. Named him after my favorite wrestler of all time. This is how much wrestling means to us. My first child is named after Bray Wyatt. My second child is named after Baron Corbin. And my third is named after Triple H. Hunter, named my favorite wrestler of all time. When we were trying to decide on names, it was a case of what stood out to us. And for me, it was what meant a lot in my life. And like the Bray Wyatt character, like just of my fandom, was the most interesting, dynamic character ever. So when we found out we were having our first kid in 2017, And this was before The Fiend even, which made it a whole nother level. We were trying to figure out names, and I was like, why not Brayden? We name him Brayden, Bray. And it's just that, and that's the reason. Everybody's like, well, you really named your kid after, and his middle name's Owen, after Kevin Owens, because of just how much I like Kevin Owens, and when he was Kevin Steen, like he was one I followed my entire like youth. Like I started watching when I was like 13 and have followed him since. But it's one of those things of like what meant a lot. And we tell people, they're like, you really named your kids after wrestlers? Yes, I did. That's how much this sport means to me, is and like how much it's meant to my wife and I in our 20 years together, like almost 20 years.
That's really, really cool, mate. And a beautiful way to end this, if I'm honest, Mike. So before we do, you know that my traditional wrap-up question is, I believe as YouTubers, podcasters, even interviewers in your case, we're all sort of going to live forever in a very, very weird way, if you think about the word. So what is one piece of content you'd like to be remembered for? And then what is one that you're like, yeah, you can forget about that. I'm not a fan of that.
There's a lot of things I'm not a fan of. A lot of stuff from my early days, like what, like I don't even want to bring up. They're just bad. Anything from like 2009 to like 2012, I kind of want to forget about. I'm very proud of the story I wrote for Fightful magazine a couple years ago about the Dale Gagne's AWA All-Stars. It's the greatest story never told, is what we called it. And like I talked to Justin Roberts for the story, who it was about a month out. I talked with him before our second child was born, and my wife loves Justin Roberts, favorite ring, and loves him. He recorded a special video for her about of what we should name our second child, and we had him do, and he did. He's like, you should name him Ja, and he did that whole thing like what he does, or what he used to do for Cena and what he does for Moxley and whatnot. And like I have that saved, and that's one of the greatest. It's things like that go, I love doing this for a living. But no, my story that I did for AEW or for Fightful magazine, I believe if you're a member of Fightful Select, they posted it up, and you can read it there. You can also get the digital version still of the magazine, but it's the greatest story never told, and it's 4,000 words of just some of the things that came out of that were incredible. That I think that's my magnum opus, I guess, as a journalist right now.
Really, really cool, my friend. Obviously, I want to say thank you to Mike for a great conversation, as always. Thank you for coming back on, my friend. But please promote yourself. Where can the good people find you, your work, etc.?
You can find me everywhere at Mike Straw Media, on Twitter, Blue Sky, Threads, YouTube, Twitch, everywhere. It's Mike Straw Media. The benefit is I have that name everywhere, even MikeStrawMedia.com. And then my gaming coverage is at Insider-Gaming.com, and my hockey coverage is at TWSN.net. So I am everywhere.
It's well worth doing, guys. One of the nicest people in this media space, and one of the most hardworking as well. So if you guys like this, make sure you like, share, and subscribe to Tom Talks Rubbish on YouTube. Follow me on Twitter or at Tom Talks Rubbish, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye now.
Thanks for watching this Tom Talks Rubbish conversation. Before you go, please make sure you leave a like on the video, share it around, and subscribe to Tom Talks Rubbish on YouTube, as well as follow Tom Talks Rubbish on Twitter/X.